Well, welcome to the Inviting Shift interviews. I'm here today with Annalisa Parent, who is here to talk to us about joy and creativity. And I really need to hear all this stuff today. So I'm really thankful to have her here on a snowy Saturday, which is what it is here. I'm Christina Smith. I am an AHA addict. I love to hear people's stories of shift and transformation and transition and how they get through it, because I think that by sharing all those stories, we can kind of see that there's definitely kind of a cycle of shift and that we can kind of invite it rather than struggle against it, which I think is so powerful and really helps us learn so much about ourselves instead of always, and loving life rather than feeling like it's frustrating. So, Annalisa, tell me more about yourself.
So I am an author and a writer, and I am a writer. So I help people to start, finish, and move to publication their writing works. And it's really, really, really exciting. I can totally relate to what you're saying about being an AHA addict, because I love seeing that moment where someone really gains confidence in what it is that they're doing and they're able to move forward. I love that. And apparently my dog, Mia, wanted to come and say hello. So she's she's here to join us.
Awesome.
Oh, did we freeze?
I hope we didn't jinx it. Yeah, we have some freeze frames and then it's kind of junking up. Oh no. Are you still there?
I'm still here.
Audio only. Okay, now I can hear you, but I can't see you, which is fine. It's probably recording your video just fine, but sometimes it does this, so this is fine.
Yes, so same thing. I can hear you. I can see me. Hey, sweet pea. Yes, so sweet pea. Okay, all right. Go lay down, please. Go lay down.
All right, so we're back. I think we have this all fixed and it's all figured out, and my internet shouldn't drop again. I think that's what happened. But Annalise was just about to tell us about her shift. You're a writer and you help other writers, right? I just wanted to go over that again.
Yes, so I'm a writer and a writing coach, so I help people to start, finish, and bring to publication their writing projects. And I was saying that I really related to your introduction about being an aha moment addict, because when people get to that point where they really have the confidence to move forward with a writing piece, it's really magical, and I love being a part of that.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's a big journey, so that's definitely something cool to be able to share with somebody else.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so tell us about your shift.
So, you know, as I was thinking about this question, I really like what you said at the top of the show about, you know, to Erin's question. There are so many shifts that we experience in life, and sometimes almost daily, depending on where we are in a particular growth cycle. But I think that the most major shift that happened for me recently was when I decided to leave my full-time job and become a full-time writing coach, which of course is terrifying because you're leaving the regular paycheck, you're leaving the insurance and benefits and all of the things that come with regular employment to kind of throw yourself out there and see if that's going to happen. So I was in the same job for about 10 years, and there was a lot that I really liked about it. There was a lot that was really beneficial to me and helped me to be a better person and was really rewarding. And that's what's important to me in my work. Obviously, you know, I have to pay the mortgage and all that kind of stuff. But for me, I really want to be getting something spiritually and emotionally from the work that I do. Which was the case largely in this position. But, you know, a couple of bad apples can spoil the whole bunch. And we ended up getting some people at the job who just made the experience really difficult on a daily basis. And that was really hard for me for a really long time. And I wasn't really sure what I was going to do about that. But there were a lot of tears and a lot of angst, and a lot of struggle around giving up something that I had really loved, but that wasn't really the same anymore. And when I made the decision to leave that job and to really do this, you know, they had offered me the next position, and I knew I was going to turn it down. And that day, you know, I'm on the phone with one of my friends, like, you know, am I really going to do this? Like, I'm turning down this chunk of money. Like, is this what I should do? Am I doing the right thing? But I knew in my heart of hearts that this was the thing to do. And so I turned down the position. And I don't know how to describe this, but when you drop something that isn't right for you, everything else opens up. Mm-hmm. And the courage that it took to do that, to let go of this unhealthy relationship that I had with this place of employment, it's been amazing since then. The rewards that I've been able to have, to feel valued and to feel like my work is meaningful, that I'm giving something to people in a way that I didn't feel anymore in that position. And you know, I still see my friends from that job, and they're still as miserable as I was back in the day. And I think, gosh, I really want for them to be able to get out of this situation. But I'm really glad that I stepped out of this and made this shift, because it took a lot of courage to do that. It scared my pants off. And you know, I didn't know if I was going to make it. Some days I still don't know if I'm going to make it. And that's not just a financial question. It's an emotional question too. I mean, it's hard to be out here as an entrepreneur, to have my own business. And, you know, that's an up and down endeavor every single day. But it's also a really cool adventure. And, taking that first step to say no to something that wasn't good for me has led to a lot of things that are really good for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I love how you say that, like when you let go of that one thing that's weighing you down, when things open up, like I saw all of a sudden so many opportunities like that I hadn't seen before because I was so focused on being miserable in the job that I was in. So, I mean, it's really hard when you're not focusing on the right thing, and you're sucked up by all of that other stuff. And so,
but at the time, the other stuff is really compelling, like having a regular paycheck is a really nice thing.
It is, right? I mean, you could be lazy at work, not get anything done, and you're still going to get paid.
And, the other thing is that when you're in a job and there's some kind of structure, you have a supervisor or whatever, that person is bearing the brunt of a lot of client feedback and that kind of thing. And when you're a one-woman show, like the buck stops here and it doesn't matter what's coming across the desk, I've got to deal with it. Mm-hmm. Which also has the added benefit, if I'm in a client relationship or if I'm in a vendor relationship that isn't working, I also get to say, this isn't working.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there's pros and cons of being able to pull all the shots, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So how did you know, now, did you just start writing and helping other people write before you left your job? I mean, you've been a writer your whole life, probably.
Yeah. Yes, so I've been a writer my whole life, and I published my first novel in December of 2014. That was a co-authored project. And so I knew that I had enough credits at that point to be able to do this because I'd written for television for 3 seasons and I've written a couple of screenplays and published a whole bunch of articles. And I had enough credits to say, yes, I'm legitimate. I can do this. Not only do I know about the craft and can I instruct around that, but I've got the publishing credits to say that I'm an author. So from that point on, I worked to figure out what my plan is. I'm a real strategizer. And so I had left a job at one point in the past and I hadn't made enough of a plan. And it was a really bad transition. And I didn't want to do that to myself this time. So I really reached out to the local writing community. I really became a part of that community and found other people who were doing the same thing that I was so that I wouldn't feel isolated in what I was doing. It's a different thing to be an entrepreneur and to work from home or to work from an office every day, but really to be in control of your own schedule versus being locked into the 9 to 5. So I wanted to have that available. I had been coaching writers all along, but I made myself more visible in that even before I left my regular 9 to 5 to say, I'm hanging my sign out. This is the thing that I'm doing. I'm available. And that was really helpful when I made the jump because I already had kind of a ground underneath me where I had established myself to a certain degree. It's just now I was doing it full time.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that because it came clear to me. I read Elizabeth Gilbert's Big Magic a few weeks ago, and she says that the way to really enjoy your craft is not to depend on it. To the point where, not to just to go, okay, I'm a writer and then never get a job. You know what I mean? Sometimes you need a job in order to be as creative as you want, because I think there's a lot of creative people when they put, every last nickel and dime into their craft, they can get less creative because they then are depending on that thing. It becomes a desperation rather than a creativity. At least I can find that it stifles me. Like if I were to put it's funny. If I were to put a time limit on writing, which I was going to say painting, but then I was like, well, what's my craft? Writing is what I'm doing, right? So, but I do that to myself. So maybe this is a good realization for me, is that I kind of rush my creativity. I think so. And so how do you manage to how do you manage to keep it all in balance now, that those fears of, you know, oh, maybe I need a paycheck, or I need this instead of, you know, more security instead of this thing that you really want? How do you balance what you want and your fear?
I think clarity is the most important ingredient there. So when I have those panic moments and I think, gosh, you know, I'm not going to eat this month, what am I going to do? It can be really tempting to put things into the menu that don't belong there, right? So like I can go down the street and get a job at McDonald's and then I'll have money, but that wouldn't satisfy what it is that I'm trying to do. And I mean, it would satisfy having money, but it wouldn't satisfy my mission. And so if I am faithful to the mission, somehow things come together. I don't know how that works. It's like a mystery of the universe. Mm-hmm. But in the moments where I've really doubted and I thought, okay, like I need to take some action right now because things just aren't very good. As long as I'm faithful to what I want to do in that action, things somehow come together. Mm-hmm. You know, and I've had panicked moments where I thought, okay, I'm just going to apply for some jobs and it's going to be okay. And none of those ever come through. And I think that it's because that's not what I'm supposed to be doing right now.
Yeah. I love that you said that, because I've been saying that to people lately when they're like, okay, so what are you doing? And I'm like, well, I'm doing some of this and some of that, and, you know, and they're like, well, you know, what's the plan? And I'm usually very like 40 steps ahead kind of girl. But this year, I just keep having this huge piece of intuition that I just hear is saying, just trust, just do the next thing and do the next thing. And this is what you're working on right now. Just focus on this, you know. And that book helped me, because all I do is show up now, and I just I do what I'm supposed to do, and it either is beautiful or it either needs to be edited again the next day, you know. But either way, I did the work, you know, and that's what she says is, you know, just to show up. But it's scary too at the same time. And I think for the first time in my life, I've like gotten this really like warm feeling about it. Like I'm just doing this thing, like, and I'm really low anxiety about it, because I just feel like, yeah, just what you said, like this is what I'm supposed to do. And these moments of anxiety are my challenges to go, okay, is this really what you want, or are you ready to cave? Like, it's fine if you are, I mean, but you can go do that, but you're not going to get any further over here then.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of this thing that a lot of people regard as being woo-woo, but when you're in your flow, when you're in your right groove, things just come together. And like, I don't get it. I can't explain it. I can't give you a formula for it. I don't know why it works. I have no idea. I just know that that's what I've experienced.
Yeah.
Which isn't to say that I don't wake up some mornings and feel frustrated or wonder what the heck's going to happen today, or why isn't this working when I think that it should. I definitely have all of those feelings, but there's a level of satisfaction and contentment that tells me that I'm where I'm supposed to be. That doesn't make sense to me, but you know, I accept it. Right, your word, trust. My word this year is acceptance. So, you know, I've been working on that. You know, self-acceptance. Just say, okay, these are my limits. Like, here I am. Yeah. But also to say, I accept these mysteries, and I don't need to analyze them or understand them. I don't know why they work. That makes me feel uncomfortable, but they work. So. There it is.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, there doesn't have to be a way to explain it in order to trust. That's the great thing. Or even accept. I mean, you don't have to be able to explain it. It is what it is, regardless of whether or not we want to accept it or not. I mean, and that's what I talk about in this book, is I talk about staying in the flow of shift, basically, which is basically staying open, you know, by accepting and being curious. So not settling, not going, okay, well, it is what it is, and there's nothing I can do. It's just accepting where it is at this moment. I have these flaws about me, or I have this negative thoughts about me. And, you know, can I be curious about something better? Can I be curious about why this thing excites me so much instead of why I'm so scared of it? Because I think that's what we forget sometimes, that excitement and fear can feel so similar. They both, you know, raise our blood pressure, get our cortisol levels going. You know, they're both stress on our body as far as the body's concerned. So I think sometimes we forget, you know, that there's real passion behind some of that excitement. It's not just fear. I know I can. If I let those voices go and go and go, I can be taken over by them. And then I can go, no, you don't even know how terrible it is.
But tell me more about your book. You were mentioning that you had kind of hit maybe a fear place or something. So tell me more about your writing.
Oh yeah, I was mentioning this before we started recording, was that I am at this point with the book where it's so funny how it changes day to day. And I don't know if you see this in other writers, but like it's like a roller freaking coaster. It makes me nuts. Like for 3 days, I'm like, oh my God, I got the whole first copy done. I'm so excited, you know, like, woo. And I'm like, now I'm just going to throw out a cover. Everything's going to be great. People are like, no, I don't like that. No, I don't like that. And like, so it's been a week long of me going, I don't even know anymore. And then because I'm questioning the cover now I'm going, well, maybe this isn't even worth anybody reading. Like maybe I'm just making this all up. Like maybe I'm not really a writer. Maybe the things that I've written nobody really needs to know, or doesn't even make sense, or maybe I don't know enough, you know. And please tell me other writers have these problems.
So it's really interesting that you mentioned that, Christina, because so a writer wrote to me last week, and that was essentially her problem, exactly what you're talking about. And what she said was, you know, I shared out my novel and I got a lot of feedback, and now I can't write anymore. I don't know what my character is going to do. And she asked me, what do I do about this? You know, how can I finish this project? And I thought about it for a long time. And so I put out an article once a week on my website. And the article that I wrote last week was about this specifically around feedback, right? So you're saying that you got some feedback on your cover and it wasn't very favorable, and that led you to question the whole entire project. So what I wrote about in my article was really two things. The first one was around the difference between creativity and production, right? So they're two totally different processes. So when I'm being creative, when I'm in creative flow, you know, I'm painting, I'm sewing, I'm writing, whatever it is that I'm doing, but I'm lost in that feeling. And I don't necessarily have an objective, right? I'm not like, I'm going to build the biggest block tower possible. I'm just, you know, putting blocks on top of each other and enjoying that process. That's creativity. Later, I might say, I want my block tower to be in the Guinness Book of World Records, so I've got to have the tallest one. Then I've got an objective, like I've got something that I need to produce. But those are not only, they don't just feel different, they are actually different in our brains. Those are two totally different neuroscientific physiological experiences. And I think that just separating those two is a really important thing, and not to confuse them, because sometimes I think we sit down to say, okay, I'm going to sew this quilt today. I'm going to paint this picture today. And we got nothing. Why? Because we're trying to create under pressure, and that's not going to work. Mm-hmm. And secondly, the point that I made in this article was around feedback. When you're in the creativity phase, it's too early to ask for feedback. So if I'm putting my blocks on top of each other and you walk by and I say, hey, Christina, what do you think about my tower? And you're like, well, you know, you put too many red blocks. I don't think that's really going to work. Right now, my growth is stunted. I'm not going to continue because I'm overanalyzing myself. And I'm thinking, okay, I got to use more yellow blocks. Maybe I don't have any. What am I going to do? Right. And so I'm second guessing myself. And so my creativity has completely been stunted at that point because I asked your opinion too soon. Right? So the point that I made in the article was that even if you've asked for that feedback too soon, it's not like you're past the point of no return at that point. There's some redemption there. So how do we fix this when you have solicited feedback about a character too soon, when you've solicited feedback about a cover too soon in the process? You've got to take a step back and get yourself into that creative zone. How do we do that? Well, we've got to have a conversation. And what I recommended to this author was that she have a conversation with the character himself to say, what is it that you want? What is it that you want to do? What are you trying to do that you're not able to do? And, that sounds a little wonky, but it works really well. Right. So some people write it out. Some people can just talk that out. Some people go for a walk with their character and come back from that experience to say, oh. And it's really funny when I posted this article, she wrote about, my gosh, this is brilliant, this is really working for me, like I know now what my character wants. And then somebody jumped on and said, I never thought to do this, of course this is going to work. So in your position, you're having a conversation with your entire piece. Mm-hmm. And you're saying, look, book, how do you want to show yourself to the world? What is it that you want to show? And if it's fern fronds or if it's a mountain vista or whatever it is, that the image that comes to your mind, that's the piece speaking. And it doesn't matter if everyone else says, I hate this cover, why'd you choose orange? Like, it doesn't matter, because the piece spoke about its own identity and you're staying true to that piece and what that piece wants. And when we're speaking from an authentic place, whether it's us as a business, whether it's us as people trying to make friends, or whether it's a book trying to sell itself, it's only going to work if we're 100% authentic.
That makes a lot of sense, because most of our confidence comes from our authenticity. And when that happens, the thing is just automatically attractive, whatever it is. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So I need to take a walk with my book, maybe in the snow.
Then you might choose tropical covers like palm trees and palm trees.
That's right. Maybe it'll be a picture of snow. Who knows? Yeah, no, that makes sense. That makes a lot of sense, because it's very similar to how any type of like transformation is. We all have those answers inside of us already. I think what you're trying to say is getting feedback too early then kind of messes your own creativity. And I can understand that, because like painting, it took me 30 some years to do a painting ever pick up a paintbrush, because I was always afraid like I wouldn't be able to do it, like to make something that looked a certain way and whatever. And then a friend of mine once said to me, girl, don't worry about what you're painting. You just put the paint on the canvas and you swash it around and you see how the colors mix. And that's all that really matters, is you just enjoy it. Like, that's what's important. And when I had that in mind, all of a sudden it became much, much easier and a heck of a lot more fun to paint. Like, I no longer had that pressure. And I'm realizing in the last week that I am one of those people where I'm just like, I come up with idea, I put a deadline, I never really check in with myself. Like, is that enough? Is that realistic? And I think, well, I know that I am known for making unrealistic goals. And so when I do that around my writing, I think it has me more nervous. So tonight I'm doing a huge editorial process with a couple of editor partners, mastermind partners of mine. And I already have this trust feeling that when I start reading it again, I'm going to go, oh, I am smart, because this is what happens. This is what happens. I question myself. I mean, because what do I care about the cover? I'll probably end up just shipping the cover out to somebody else to do for me anyway, because I just don't even want to deal with it anymore at this point. But I'll have my own idea. I like what you said about coming up with my own idea. And then at least if I give it to somebody else, it's like having that genius outside of me where I'm no longer responsible for it. It is what it is. And I don't think it should matter that much. But that's just me, not judging a book by its cover. Apparently it's very important to some people. But I really like, I lost my thought there. Yeah, I lost it. Oh, I really just feel like once I put that away, because once I start getting frustrated with it, I have to put it away. I just cannot, it's not going to help me to go spin in circles and stare at it because it's not going to change. So I just put it away. I'm like, that's it. I'm done with it for now. And I put it away. And then I can come back to it fresh when I feel better about it, when I feel like, okay, like even if I have to start from scratch, no big deal. We're going to do this again, you know? And like I said before, I just kind of show up. We're going to look at this and we're going to try to be objective and whatever. And I mean, I've gotten good at taking people's feedback as, you know, it's an understanding that they love me, that they even want to offer it. That's how I try to look at it. You know, they took time to give me their opinion. I don't have to believe their opinion. I don't have to go with their opinion. In the end, it's all about me anyway. So I choose all of that stuff. It was just, I guess it was just frustrating to the marketing focus group in me, where it was like, normally there's one that everybody's like, yeah, that's the one. But then I also had to look through that list and go, okay, well, who here is actually in my target market?
Right.
There's certain people who I really don't care what your opinion is, because if you read the book, you wouldn't get it, or you know, it just wouldn't be for you. It's not something you would read. So why? I'm not marketing to you.
And that's a really good point too, to really know who your target market is. And that's been some of my frustration around certain writing workshops. People who say things like, well, I've never read anything in this genre, but first of all, if you're going to be serious about being a writer, you should read within your genre. You know, you should know what's already out there. Not only is it going to help you to market your book, but it also helps you to know sort of what is the context that you're fitting into. So I feel like you almost have a responsibility to be reading in your genre, whatever that is, and then go and read outside of your genre. Figure out what it is that other people are writing. How are they putting it together? Read something that you wouldn't normally pick up for your own reading, and just kind of study it and see what people do. You can learn a lot by reading, just reading, if you want to be a writer. So yeah, I completely understand what you're saying about knowing who your market is that you're going to be selling to, because that feedback is going to be the most meaningful.
Right, exactly. Absolutely. So I'm getting better at it, and I have faith that it's just all going to work itself out. But that, I mean, for me, that's years of working on that shift, because it used to be, you know, if it wasn't perfect, just trash it. And if it wasn't going to be something worth being productive, like, without trying to sound negative, like I don't expect this first book to be like a huge bestseller. Like I'm not looking to be on the Amazon top 10 or anything. Like it's almost like a process of just like birthing it and getting it out. So I know what it's like almost. So it's not, so it's been a long process, and I again forgot where I was going. I'm having a heck of a morning. I'm telling you, for some reason, this snow just completely throwing me off. I did have a point, but I completely forget what it was. But I'm getting past this. Oh, look, hi, Dennis. That's my stepfather. Wonder if that's my mother. You can write in there. Yeah, so now I'm just struggling with these stupid mindsets. Oh, I was talking about how it's been many years. Yeah, it took me many years. You know, if it wasn't perfect before, it wasn't nearly good enough to even consider, you know, putting out to the world or being seen with it. And now I just kind of throw it out there, and it is what it is. It is who I am. So
yeah. And I mean, I think there's a certain degree of self-acceptance in that, right? That once you've accepted that you yourself can never be perfect, then it's a lot easier to accept that what you create can also never be perfect. Because we do have a connection. What we create is an extension of ourselves. And to the extent that we're hard on ourselves, we may also be hard on the things that we create.
Mm-hmm. And there's that quote that I always love that says that you're allowed to be a masterpiece and a work in progress at the same time. Like, so my book has always been a masterpiece. It just, you know, I just need to be able to see it, and it's getting there. So I'm very excited about that. So I love the advice that you've already given me about my book. So what would you advise someone else who is struggling to get into their creativity?
So when someone's struggling with creativity, a lot of the strategies that I have are around play, because I feel like play and creativity are really, really closely linked. And as adults, we forget how to play, right? We have a lot of responsibilities, and play seems to be unimportant or the least likely thing to take up our time. And so I've had groups of adults dancing around the room, playing with Legos, working with clay, just playing, really. And I'm a very playful person, and so I think that one of my gifts is drawing out play in people. People have told me that I'm the person who's going to get the hokey pokey started at a party just because it's silly and it's fun. And I think that once you give yourself that permission, and I've seen this transition happen in a lot of participants in my workshop, you know, the people who want to be the wallflowers for a little while and just watch, once they kind of allow themselves to make that transition and join into the silliness and give themselves permission to drop that thing that they're carrying that's keeping them, they've also accessed a place where they can give themselves permission to be creative. Because once you've, you know, danced around the room or done the hokey pokey or the duck dance or, you know, whatever it is that we're doing, you also have permission to fail, you know, to like let go of that standard of like my finger painting has to be the best finger painting in the class, or, you know, whatever it is that you're holding on to. Hang-ups that we all have that are very natural to have, but I feel like play is a really great access to creativity. It's a little easier to get into that in groups. So if a person is by themselves or they're isolated or they're unable to join a group, I encourage people to take on something outside of their genre. So I mentioned finger painting, right? Finger painting is really great because it's hard to feel like a failure when you finger paint. And so, because it's something that we did when we were very young, right? It's a very tactile experience. There was never an expectation that finger painting was going to be a masterpiece, in the same way that once you get a brush in your hand, you think, oh my goodness, like I'm not Da Vinci, what's going to happen? Yeah.
And what you're saying about expectations, though, I mean, that's I really believe expectations is a downfall of anything. Every time you expect anything, even if you think it's a low expectation, you know, hope, wish maybe, but don't expect on certain things turning out, because I can tell you that's where most of my misery in my life has come from, is I've expected one thing to happen and something else happened. And that's where, yeah, it kills your creativity when I expect that when I'm done with this is what I should have, you know, you've just ended it.
Right. Because you've gotten into production instead of creativity. So, I mean, and I think that finger painting is magic in that way because the expectations are gone. And one of the things that's really fun is you can finger paint with pudding. This is true. You get out some wax paper and you whip up some chocolate pudding, whatever flavor you like, and then you get to eat it afterwards. That's kind of fun. Or not, if you want to eat your painting, right? Because if you've moved the pudding around, and then you eat it all off of your fingers, like the painting literally disappears. And so it wasn't the painting that was important. It was the experience of creating something with the medium. And so these are ways that we can kind of trick ourselves into getting into a creative zone without the pressure of production and the expectation that it's going to be the best thing ever, or whatever pressure we're putting on ourselves. But that's why I like something outside of your genre, right? So I'm a writer. So if I'm writing, it's going to be much harder for me to get rid of that voice, that inner critic. If I'm finger painting, if I'm knitting, I mean, these are things that I'm certainly not an expert in. Even painting with a paintbrush, that's not really my genre. I can dabble in it and have a good time because, I'm never going to put something in a gallery. I would have to do a lot of work between now and then to make that happen. I'm not a painter. That's not my thing. I'm not a sculptor. So if I get out some clay, I can just play with that and give myself permission to play without there having to be an end goal in mind, because that's not my medium. So I think stepping outside of your medium can be really powerful to find creativity.
Yeah, that's a good one. That's a good one. And I'm trying to think. So your shift was coming out of your job. And I think that's so funny how you said much earlier about how you talk to people in your job now and they're still as miserable, because I do the same thing. My husband actually still works for the company that I worked for last. And it was a beautiful job. It was just, like you said, you know, there's always a few of those people who make things a lot harder than they need to be, my judgment. And so for me, it was the best thing to do was to leave, because I felt like I was being stifled there. And I go through the same things, the ups and the downs of that. But have you known anybody else that has been able to leave though, or do they all just seem? Because I think I mean, I know it's a choice, but sometimes it's an unconscious choice. You know, do I keep settling for what I have because I have a paycheck, or do I find a way to move on? And sometimes it's hard because, you know, there's people there that you really care about. You know, the relationships are there and everything. So what would you say to somebody who is still stuck in that position?
Well, it's really interesting because you mentioned relationships, and that kind of tied back to what you said previously about expectations. So this is tangential, but, you know, I think that when I was preparing to leave this job, I really checked in with what my expectations were around what was going to happen once I left. And there were some people who were my friends who were really meaningful to me, but I also understood from having left jobs in the past that, you know, there's this out of sight, out of mind phenomenon that happens when you leave a job. And the first time that happened to me, it was really disappointing. It was really devastating. And because I had that experience, I said, well, you know, in making this step, in leaving this position, I might be leaving these relationships behind too. These might just disappear because I'm not with them every day, and that might go away. I might lose this friend group that I have. I might lose the support system that I have. There might be a lot of loss here. And so my expectation around them, those people in my life, was very low, that I would ever see them again. And as it turned out, you know, I hung out with all of them last night. We all went out to dinner and to see a show. And wow, like that's amazing that happened. But it was around shifting my expectations for what was going to happen, and to accept that loss was a possibility, and to really decide that my self, my emotional health, was more important than those relationships, and I needed to let go of those. Yes. So, you know, there's some letting go. I think that's sometimes we think we have a little more control over our lives than we actually do. And accepting that and letting go of those expectations, I think, can have really powerful ramifications. You know, in the end, best case scenario that could have happened. The people that I really love and care about are still in my life, and that's wonderful. But I didn't ever expect them to continue to be my friends, to follow me into the next chapter of my life, because I understood that I was leaving the context in which we had formulated this relationship.
Nice, nice. So again, just like inviting shift, you stayed open and curious as to where it could go, you know, not shutting them off, but saying, well, it'd be really nice if this was going to continue. And if it doesn't, you know, I still need to take care of me. And in the end, that's what it was about. And it sounds like it's turning out great. I can't wait to hear all the updates. And if you get a message from me, you know, panicked at the end of next week going, that's it, I give up. Sell my manuscript.
Yeah, I'm really excited to hear how that comes together. It sounds like you're really in the final stages of putting it out in the world.
Yeah, that's wonderful. That's what I thought. So we'll see. We'll see. It might come to the point where I'm just like, you know what? What I really need is another month. And if that happens, that happens. Because it'll be whatever I'm being told by my intuition. And I am really good at just following that. And I liked how you talked about how people like to control things. And the funny thing about that for me is that people like to control other things, right? Things that they can't control. And no one wants to control those things that we can control, which is, you know, our responsibility, our reaction, our participation, all of that stuff, you know, or our attitude. We can always choose our attitude or our actions. And yet, I think often we want to, instead, it's easier in our minds to control somebody else or the situation or whatever.
Paradox that we put ourselves into that just isn't ever going to work.
Right. I want to be creative, but this chapter better be done in 2 hours.
Yes, exactly.
So, well, thank you so much for being on today. I really, really appreciate it. I'm going to stop the recording. Do you have anything else to do to say before I stop the recording?
Well, I just want to put out there, if people are interested in talking to me about their writing, I would love to hear from them. I'd love to hear what people are working on and how it's going for them. And I'll type my email, or not email, but website over here in the notes. It's date, like what you go out with on a Friday night, datewiththemuse.com. So it's time for your creative self. Date with the Muse. That's my cleverness.
And she has a lot of really good resources on that site. I've been there and been reading through them too. So yeah, so please go visit her site if you're looking at writing something, because like I said, she's got a lot of good information. And thank you so much, Annalisa, for
having me, Christina. It's been a pleasure and an honor.
Yeah, I'm going to stop the recording.